Did you know that St. Louis is home to the largest collection of transportation vehicles in the world? We'll have more next on City Corner. Hi, I'm Steve Potter, and welcome to City Corner. Today we're going to explore the National Transportation Museum. That's the National Museum of Transportation. I'm already off to a bad start, but Jessica is here to help me. Please welcome Jessica Hood. She is the community outreach person there, and we also are joined by a volunteer at the museum. That's Ken Veldt. Welcome to you both.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
Hey, I messed up the name a little in the beginning, and part of the reason might be, and this must be true for other people, you guys have been around a long time. But the reason you're here today was just because a couple of weeks ago I saw a commercial on TV about the museum, and I thought, I've never heard of it.
Yeah, we've actually been here we're celebrating our 75th anniversary this year.
That makes it 1944.
1944, yes.
That's amazing.
Long time.
And
yes, it is.
Ken, you've been a volunteer for how long?
6 years.
And why would you decide to volunteer at a museum of transportation?
My career was with Boeing, which is transportation oriented, actually finished out at Douglas in California. And we moved back to St. Louis, and we were looking for some place to volunteer. Mm-hmm. And the museum was transportation related, and we have a long history in the family of trains.
You mean real trains or toy trains?
Both.
Did you have the old Lionel set like I did?
Yes, we did. Uh-huh. My brother is still a very, very enthusiastic model railroader.
Jessica, you're relatively new as far as employment with the museum. How long have you been there?
Yeah, so I started end of May. Uh-huh. So it's been a learning curve. I did not have the toy trains, and I didn't have a passion for the real trains. Growing up, my grandpa and my uncle worked for the railroad, so yeah, it's been exciting.
Well, what can you tell me about the history of the museum? You said it all began in 1944, and I'm wondering, why St. Louis?
It was all the brainchild of a gentleman named Dr. Roberts, who really liked trains, and he started the museum, got the land donated there at our site there at Kirkwood on Barrett Station Road, and he began collecting trains. And what he did was he set up the museum as a 501c3 so that railroads could donate their equipment and get a tax deduction for it. Mm-hmm. So we have an extensive collection of really historic steam engines, and then we expanded into transportation, airplanes, cars. We have one boat. Uh-huh. And so that's how it got started. But that was the fact that land was available and could be donated by, I guess it was then Missouri Pacific Railroad. Uh-huh.
Let's take a look at the first image we have to share with our viewers, and you can tell me what it is. And this is Bellefontaine.
Yeah, so the Bellefontaine was the original artifact that started the museum. So if I understand correctly, there was a group of people that came about this.
And this is it. It's a train car called Bellefontaine?
A mule-drawn streetcar.
A mule-drawn streetcar.
That, they came across this artifact, and then kind of the rest is history.
Yeah, it wasn't in that condition, of course. But we do have a dedicated group of restoration people that have worked since the 40s and still work today as volunteers to restore the artifacts to the condition that you see them today.
Now, when people hear a mule-drawn streetcar, some people might not even, people know what streetcars are, but it was just like what we think of today, that the tracks were in the ground, only instead of
on the streets.
Instead of an engine, they were pulled by an animal.
And eventually the engines were replaced by electric motors. Uh-huh. I mean, the mules were replaced by electric motors and wires and things like that.
Well, what's your assessment of the U-City trolley? Does that kind of add to the ambiance of what you guys do?
Any historic transportation is good.
Sure.
Have you checked that out yet?
I have not.
I haven't either.
I'm looking for it. Jessica, could you just explain just generally exactly where the museum is and how big it is and what it encompasses?
Sure. So it is bigger, I think, than most of us think. Acreage-wise,
40 plus acres.
40 plus acres.
Wow.
It's tucked away off of Barrett Station Road. You drive by and you wouldn't know that it's all hidden back there. It's a beautiful piece of land. Yes, it's definitely a walking experience. So if you
Right.
come out, wear your tennis shoes.
So do you walk through 40 acres, Ken? How does that
No,
work?
no, you have actually 3 levels. The lower level is our visitor center, where we would, in a minute, we'll see the picture of the creation station.
Yeah, let's go to the next image because I think that is of the visitor center. And go ahead and continue.
Lower level is our visitor center, and then there's some various artifacts there. You go up to the next level, and we have the Automotive Building, where we have the automobiles and other. We have a whole room full of cars that were actually made here in St. Louis. Used to be a major car manufacturing area, and things like Doris and Moon, some people
Right.
may remember those. And then the upper level has a lot of our various steam engines and trolley cars.
Mm-hmm. Do you know back in 1944, of course, when it began, it couldn't have been on this large of a scale, right?
Oh no, he built it up over time. He actually lived there in a car on the property, and he began collecting volunteers. And we actually have 3 of our volunteers have been with the museum 50 years. So he used to.
No kidding.
No kidding.
Wow.
That guys would come out as teenagers, and they're still working today.
Huh. I think I asked this. I'm not sure if you answered, though. I kind of said, why St. Louis? You know, St. Louis, of course, was an important hub of transportation in the 1800s. Ken, you know better than I.
Well, yeah, St. Louis was the major, side of the Mississippi. So the first tunnel west of the Mississippi is on our property today. It was carved for what was then the Pacific Railroad, eventually became the Missouri Pacific, and now the Union Pacific. So St. Louis has always been a transportation hub, particularly for rails. Once the Eads Bridge was built to allow rail travel over to this side of the river.
Wasn't Union Station, like at one time, more of a hub than Chicago as
Oh,
far as
yes.
rail?
Yes, it was huge.
And people might not remember, too, even our airport at one time when I was young. It was even at a larger scale than it is today,
Back in the
wasn't it?
days of TWA and American and Ozark, yes, it was.
Right. Let's go to the next image, and this is something called Creation Station. Jessica, what's that about?
Creation Station is essentially a big room on the inside of our visitor center. So it's geared towards kids ages 1 to 5 and their families. When they come in for admission, it's $2 extra, and it's an hour of free play. And you can see the room here, transportation themed. Kids can go in and play with trains and cars and all kinds of things. It's a huge hit. There's limited capacity, so only so many people can get in at a time, and it often sells out in the mornings.
Mm-hmm. So, but is it more than just play? There must be an education element to it.
Mostly, we like to call it structured free play. So they come in, they have a good time, and then they go out and they get to see the rest of the museum.
Mm-hmm. What kind of attendance do you get at this museum? Do you know any numbers?
It varies from day to day. Weather is a huge factor in.
Because a lot of it's outside.
Yes, 80%, I believe.
I guess all the big
correct.
Steam engines and things are outside.
Hard to put
Yes,
those
they are.
inside.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, so weather is a big factor, and then summer is huge because everybody's out of school, and we get a lot of tourists and people come from across the country, across the world, come
Right.
through the museum.
What about annually? Do you have a number?
I don't know that
I
I
don't
know
have a
the
number.
number. I know we'll talk about it in a minute, for the holidays throughout the month of December, I believe about 14,000 people come through.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Is it mostly families?
I would say so.
I mean, people with kids?
Mostly families, a lot of grandparents and grandchildren.
It must be interesting, Ken, to kind of examine the people that come, because there might be older people that are relating to some of the things they're seeing, but kids, it would all be new to them, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would. A lot of them don't really remember trains, particularly passenger rail travel, which we kind of feature as a history of that. But every once in a while, you'll be giving a tour and you've got a former Amtrak engineer. And so at that point, you listen and you learn from them. But no, we get a lot of families, grandparents, grandkids. And then we do get some real rail enthusiasts. Well, what are you doing here? Well, I drove from Kentucky, or I'm on my way to Wyoming or something. So we do get some real rail buffs, and they're fun.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you mentioned talking to people who may have worked there. Does anything come to mind? Do you remember meeting somebody that told you an interesting story?
Not really offhand,
Okay.
but if I think a while, maybe.
Okay.
We do get a lot of stories, people
Yes.
coming in and sharing about, we'll see a picture of the big boy here in a minute. A gentleman is doing a cross-country tour to see all the big boys that are left.
Okay. Are there any other museums like this in the country, or even
Oh,
similar?
There are quite a few rail museums throughout the country, and they each all have a little difference. We prefer to have really unique engines, and we'll talk about some of them later, unique things. Other people are big into operating. We don't operate any trains. We do operate trolleys. So there's different emphasis around in different areas. There's a couple of them in Illinois, Kentucky, you know, there are a lot of rail museums, but we're the best.
The next image we're going to look at is a tugboat. Now, I knew about trains and things, but tugboats, that's interesting.
Yeah, we do have a tugboat. I included this picture so that we could see the yellow handrail painted on this. So many of our exhibits out at the museum have a yellow marking. That means you can go up and climb through it and play on it. Kids get a real kick out of that sort of thing. Really neat to go inside and see what the inside looks like.
Because a lot of our people that come through are kids don't want to just look, they want to climb. And so you want to have things like the tugboat and many of the engines where they can in fact go up in, see the cab, and actually be on board.
Ken, it's just kids that want to climb.
True.
If I go, I'm climbing. Jessica, are you still, does the museum still look for things to add to the collection, or do you have everything you need?
I think we're always interested
You're always interested in something unique.
Yes, learning more. That's unfortunately not my department of saying, sure, we'll take it. But you know, storage might be complicated with artifacts such as these that are this big.
We have a shot now of what I think is the auto building. Tell me about that.
Ken, I'll let you take this.
Well, we have a collection of automobiles. I draw your attention on the picture to the car on the right. It's kind of a bronze color. That's a Chrysler turbine car. There were only 50 of them built. They were loaned out for people to use. And of the 50, only 3 are still running, and we have one of them. One of our volunteers worked at Chrysler, and he restored it, and it does run periodically. He'll take it out. And that particular car was actually signed by Jay Leno. He has one of the other 2. So
Yeah, he owns about 500 cars, doesn't he?
yeah.
I'm exaggerating a little bit, but
So
not
we have a
much.
lot of different cars. We have 2 older electric cars not from this current age, but from before people were experimenting with electric. And like I said earlier, we have a room full of cars that were just made in St. Louis.
Fascinating. We're going to take a short break. We've got more things to look at and talk about the National Museum of Transportation. We'll be back with more City Corner right after this. Back to City Corner, and today we're taking a closer look at the National Museum of Transportation. Jessica Hood is representing the museum. She's here with us right now, as well as longtime volunteer Ken Veldt. When I say long time, Ken, I think you said 6 years.
6 years, right.
But earlier, did you say there were some volunteers that have been there 50
Yes,
years?
we have 3 people that have been volunteering for 50 years and are still volunteering.
What do you do as a volunteer?
I do tour guide tours through the museum. I spend at least one afternoon a week there just explaining railroads and in particular passenger rail travel to our visitors.
And just to be clear on the location, Barrett Station Road, that's a long road. How do you specifically identify your location for people?
I would say it's between Doherty Ferry and Big Bend. So kind of nestled right there in the middle.
Let's see, let's look at another image we have here from the museum, and this is a train of some sort?
This is the miniature train, which you can ride.
Sort of like the one they have at the zoo?
Yes. Yes.
And tell me about that, where does it go?
It's a big hit. It runs around we talked about the different levels of the museum, so this runs around the bottom level of the museum. Got train conductors, and it's a great experience.
And do they see certain things during the ride?
Yes, there are airplanes and some other stuff that are viewed from the train.
We have a shot now of a trolley. We were talking about trolleys earlier.
Yeah, so we have the miniature train, and we also have trolleys that you can ride on the upper level, kind of going back to the levels of the museum.
We have 4 antique trolleys. One is over 100 years old. It was run by the St. Louis Water Works.
Wow.
From downtown up to Chain of Rocks. This particular car was on the Chicago L system. And then there's 2 other, what they call PCCs, one from Philadelphia and one operated here in St. Louis. So one of our volunteer groups actually operates those trolleys. They go through extensive training in safety and operation, and generally Thursday mornings through Sunday mornings, you can ride the trolley. It's part of your admission to the museum and a chance to see that.
Jessica, there are a lot of things we've just looked at are permanent exhibits, but they do change. Other things do change from time to time, don't they?
Yes, and even in the visitor center, that will often have a different look if you come in different times throughout the year. So that is what's in there now, the picture that you saw. For the holidays, it changes out quite a bit, and a very Christmassy exhibit comes in, and it's very festive through the month of December.
Let me, I've got a little calendar here. Let me just throw out a couple things
Sure.
to you, things coming up, and if either one of you want to comment on this. Coming up at the end of October, October 21st, you have an exhibit that deals with classic trucks.
Yes, I don't know too much about this until I get to see it, but super exciting.
We have lots of trucks that are, again, our volunteer workmen have restored over time.
So these be like utility trucks of
Right.
some sort?
Yeah, lots of different things. One of them is a vegetable truck, and there's lots of different trucks.
September 21st, something that has to do with the Smithsonian Museum.
During that day, across the country, museums open up to any Smithsonian member for free. So if you're a member of the Smithsonian in Washington, you can get in free, and we're one of the museums where you can get in free. So we're
really
expecting a big crowd.
Busy day for us.
I had an Oldsmobile Cutlass back about 35 years ago. And coming up on September the 22nd, I think it is, you have something called an Oldsmobile Fun Show. What's that about?
We do have I would say a dozen or so car shows that come through. Some of them are traveling car shows, some stop on their way to other things, some meet here yearly.
So I might see my old Cutlass in this one?
Maybe.
And then in October, you have something to do with the Cadillac Club.
Another one of those.
Another one of the groups.
Car
There's
show
groups
clubs.
of people that own those cars and do a great job restoring them, and they want to show them off once in a while.
You mentioned holidays and things. Halloween's coming up. You doing anything for that?
We are. So every year we do have trick-or-treating during the day. So with admission, you can wear your costume and come out and trick-or-treat while you see.
Do you have to, does your costume do you have to dress like a car or a truck?
It doesn't have to be transportation related. And then this year we're trying our very first, we're calling it Trick or Track. So it's an evening train ride. Wear your costumes, come out and ride the train at night, which we've never done before. So it's very exciting. We did sell out that event really quickly, but we learned for next year to open it up to more people. So,
all right, let's look at this next image. This has to do with the holiday theme, and people are going to wonder, what does this have to do with cars, trucks, and trains?
The holidays are huge at the museum. So we have Santa and his reindeer come out for some weekends during December. And then Santa also comes in by a variety of different modes of transportation. So he'll be flying in via helicopter, which is really exciting. That was one of the highlights of the December month last year. So we're going to try to bring out even more different modes for him to get in.
Someone told me, I'm not kidding, someone told me just the other day they were somewhere and some store was playing Christmas music already.
I have seen the decorations on sale already.
Unbelievable. Let's look at this next image because everyone's heard of Pollinator Gardens. I've had them other places. I was surprised to find out that there's a Pollinator Garden at the National Museum of Transportation.
Yes, we have a beautiful pollinator garden. We have pollinators as well as Missouri natives. So we have a great group of landscaping volunteers and staff that do a ton of work to make these gardens beautiful out there. Not necessarily related when you think about it, but there are a lot of kids that come through to see the museum and the artifacts, and we just think it's a great touch, especially if it's just an empty space.
Right, and we are a walking museum, so you are walking through a lot of the grounds, and our volunteers in the gardens and the Pollinator Gardens keep them in great shape. So.
Any special advice for people, since you say it's walking? Some people are better at walking than others, so what about people who might have specific handicaps or things? Do you accommodate them, or how does that all work? Or what do you want to let people know about that?
It's a little bit tricky because of the space that is needed to cover. We often try to do what we can to make sure it's easier for people to get where they want to go. So we do have a little bit of room to work with as far as an extra parking lot or maybe a back entrance that we can let them in.
Yeah,
if
we
they
have 3 levels, but there is a parking lot on each one, which we can direct people that don't want to climb the hills between the levels.
And I guess your website may be a good place for people to go find out things, right?
We did just get a new website, so it's tnmot.org. We'll put that up here in a bit. But yes, all the information that you could hope for.
And there it is right there.
Even if you call the 6212 number and get our visitor center, everybody's really knowledgeable about getting you the information.
Mm-hmm. So this has been a big learning curve for you.
Yes. Yes, I would say my transportation knowledge was limited when I started at the Transportation Museum, but guys like Ken who know all of these fun facts about things made it really easy to gather these tidbits of knowledge.
Ken, did you all know all this before you started?
No, I didn't. They pretty much trained me. Like I said, I worked for McDonnell Douglas Boeing, so I was really an airplane guy, but they have a training program for our tour guide volunteers to explain all the artifacts that are there. And then because the tour guides are so knowledgeable, even when you're sitting around, you're talking about trains. So you learn a lot of it there.
So what did you do at Boeing exactly?
I was in finance.
Oh.
And actually on the West Coast, I retired from Douglas on the commercial programs.
Why do you think people are so interested in just that broad topic of transportation? What do you think the lure is? Do you have any idea?
Well, transportation is what allows our society to be what it is. If you think about before there were trains even, when you had a business, you could only sell to the surrounding area or the surrounding village. Once you had trains, you could begin to market your items or get stuff moved in from other markets, and trains even expanded that. And then from about the 1850s to the 1950s, if you wanted to do intercity travel in the US, it was trains. And in fact, most of the mail intercity moved by trains. So it's what ties our society together. It's changed now with interstates and things like that.
I've always been a big fan of Metrolink, and so glad that came back because it sort of takes you back to that feel and that time in a way, don't you think?
Yes.
Yeah, and it's the museum is great for having something for everyone. Anybody can get a kick out of all of the different things that are there. So we pride ourselves on everybody being able to learn something.
Well, my best friend had a Corvette when I was in high school, and I was really jealous, but he would drive me around a lot. And we have a shot of a car show that you do, and it's all about Corvettes, so I know I would be interested in this one.
Right.
Yep, this is just a neat picture of one of the car shows that comes through.
And so it's not necessarily old vehicles, obviously.
Right. It can be, the Corvette Club, the
Right.
Chevy Club, a whole variety of different
Groups
car
of
shows.
people that are passionate about their hobby.
Boy, car shows are popular everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's such a cool sight to see when you're driving up to the museum and you see all these Corvettes parked in the parking lot. It's really neat.
Can we take them for a test drive, or
No.
they don't let you
They're
do
not
that?
my cars.
Okay, all right. I just thought I would ask.
Probably not.
Let's look at this next one, and you call it Big Boy.
It's the big boy. This was the largest steam engine that was built here in the U.S. It was usually made to haul coal out in Wyoming. There were only 20-something of them built, and only 7 remain. We have one of the 7. And there actually is one of them that's been restored by Union Pacific to operating condition. And if you look on Union Pacific's website, you can see where you could actually see one of those monsters running.
Okay, our last image we have to look at, and I guess winter will be here before we know it too, so this is appropriate. A snowblower.
Right, this was 3 of these were built by Union Pacific. They're still operating one of them. It's marked for 12 feet of snow, and I'm not sure I want to be there anywhere there's 12 feet of snow, but it's again a very unique engine that's part of our collection.
And I don't know that I ever thought about a train having to travel on tracks that were full of snow.
Particularly
And
Sierra Nevada.
how you would have to fix that. So
Yeah, particularly back in the day, right? Yeah.
Right.
Well, do you have something else you call a boxcar boutique?
gift shop on site has a huge variety of things. They are transportation related, most of them. So yeah, if you come through the museum, just be sure to take a stop through the gift shop, the Boxcar Boutique.
Is there anything that we haven't covered as far as high points to take a look at when you're there?
Just would mention that at Christmas time, that visitor center is filled with two huge model train displays. One was the display that used to be in the famous bar Macy's downtown window at Christmas time. They donated it to us, and a group of volunteers assembles it, and it's the old. And then there's another huge model railroad display that's put together by our own model railroaders, and those are open most of December that people can view, and it's really kind of neat for kids to see it.
Jessica, if you ran into someone like me that had, I feel like I must have been living in the dark or something, not knowing about this museum that's been there that long, what would you tell the person that this is new to them? What would you tell them?
I would tell them to make sure they have a day set aside that they could spend at the museum. Not a super hot day if you're just plan for the weather. Bring your walking shoes and just have fun.
Have a good time.
Yeah.
Bring the family
Right.
and some friends.
Yes.
It's the National Museum of Transportation. We want to thank our guest today. That's Jessica Hood, and she brought along volunteer Ken Veldt. We thank you so much, and keep up the good work, and we'll send people out to see you. It's the National Museum of Transportation. There's the contact information. Go to their website, find out more about that. I'm Steve Potter. Thanks for joining us for this edition of City Corner, and I hope you'll join us next time.